Welcome to the Co-Creators podcast. I'm Chloe Anderson.
And I'm Lakita Williams, and we help leaders and organizations build the future of work. Hello, co-creators. Welcome back to this episode of the pod. I am thrilled because we are talking about our top reads for 2025. And I'll give the parameters that we outlined in just a bit. But we want to say that in addition to our top reads for 2025, from each of us, you're going to get another episode, which will be a solo episode. And I'm going to be doing my top podcast episodes of 2025. I'm thrilled. I'm a real big podcast geek. And Chloe, what are you going to be doing for the people?
I am going to bring you some of my favorite TikToks and TikTok creators. So I am like a learn through TikTok girl and woman, I guess. And I am like gonna bring those because
Yes.
there are just some great gems there that I think people need to share. And social media gets a bad rap for a lot of reasons, right? Like there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of data and evidence behind
Mm-hmm.
it. And there are some really great places and pockets and communities. So I want to
Yes.
bring some of my favorites to you, which is going to cover the breadth, right? Not just business. We're going to talk lifestyle. We're going to talk well-being, all the
I
things.
love
So
it. Yes. And I think you're going to find that with this week's episode as well. So let's dive in. The first thing I'm going to say is that we have a different number of books. We each have picked, like, here's what really resonated for us this year. Sometimes some of our books we have both read. So you may hear them from one of us
yep.
versus the other. It did not have to be written in 2025. It could have been written whenever, but it was read by each of us in 2025. And
Yes.
we have mostly nonfiction, but we have a fiction or two in there. And we also, I think that covers everything. Yeah.
I
Anything?
think,
Did I miss anything?
no, I think that covers everything.
All right.
We got it.
All right, let's do it. So I'm gonna kick us off with, and I tried to remember in order which I read. So this isn't, I think for me and Chloe, this isn't an exhaustive list, but
Yeah.
what made the cut, if you will, for what we wanted to share. And so maybe not surprisingly, Chloe, I opened up the year reading on Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I had not read it before. It is a really quick read, but it is a call to action. This was written many years ago by Timothy Snyder on what we could do, like what it looks like as we slide toward I'm sorry, authoritarianism.
Yeah.
And how we can resist. But I love the fact that it had 20 lessons and it basically outlines each of the lessons. Like one of them is do not obey in advance. And that one is probably the one I think about most from the read, meaning don't comply and shift norms or powers. Don't give consent before you are required to, right? Before escalation happens. And it just resonated with me so much. I also found myself when I was reading it thinking, damn, like who read this when it came out? Because there is so much we could have avoided if all of us
Right.
had one read this book and two taken action, which I think was his intention in writing the book.
And I have that in my list. I've not read it yet, but I've downloaded it because I'm an audiobook person generally. So I've got it downloaded and it's talked about a ton. I love the don't comply in advance, not just for like authoritarianism, but just in general,
Yeah.
especially as women, right? In like coaching situations where people are like, well, they're gonna treat me like this because I'm a woman, or and again, it's like don't comply in advance, right?
Yes.
Like,
Standing
no,
your
stand your ground.
autonomy
Yep.
and authority. Absolutely. I love
Yep.
it. All right. What's your first one?
Perfect. Okay, well, I'm gonna go a little bit different direction, and I'm gonna start with Careless People. So this was the
Oh,
book that was written by ex-Facebook employee. that there was
Ah,
all this drama around it, right? Mark Zuckerberg tried to like get it to not
block it
be,
from coming
yes,
out, right?
yes,
That's what
block
I
it from coming
thought.
out.
T.
And here is what I will say. It is um an indictment
Ooh.
of Facebook, of kind of tech in general in certain ways. And I like it's really eye-opening. It
Mm.
definitely shifted my viewpoint on a number of things, right? I think, you know, Lakita, we were talking as I was reading it, and I was like, can we get off of Meta products? Can we,
Yes.
can we?
Yeah.
And, you know, we're figuring out
Yeah. Next steps
what,
there.
yes, being pragmatic, what can we do? What can't we do? How are we going to approach this? But it was incredibly eye-opening and just a good reminder that like what we see and what people want to show us is not the whole story. And so it's
Yeah.
always useful to dive in a little bit deeper, to get a little bit more information. Of course, this is one side of the story, and there's not necessarily another side to contradict it, um, other than Mark Zuckerberg trying to get it to not come out.
Yeah,
But
we don't need another side. Yeah.
no,
I think
no,
all
exactly.
the
I
all the
know that's how
evidence
I feel
points
too.
to
And I'm
all the
trying.
evidence points to yeah, this is
Yeah,
real.
this is real, 100%. If it wasn't, she would be getting sued, right? Like,
Right,
there's no
yeah.
question. So, it was such an interesting and entertaining read to me, and
Mm.
terrifying at the
Uh,
same time.
Yeah, I remember when you were reading this book, you were like, "Whoa!" Like you actually pinged me, and you were like, "We have to get off of these products." And I was like, "Okay, we're gonna need to figure out a strategy and do it because ultimately we know like where we spend money matters, and where we give our attention to matters. So take definitely taking steps towards that. But I remember the impact that this book had when you read it. So
Yeah,
folks, check it out. And I love books where even in, let's say it's a business book, there is so much story to it that really
yeah,
illustrates what has happened. And that sounds like the way that this book is written.
yeah. It was great.
Man, I love it. I love it. Okay, so up next for me, what I dived into that really resonated was Living in Wisdom. And this is by Devi Brown. And it is a path to embodying your authentic self, embracing grief, and developing self mastery. So this was like a growth, well being guide. The thing that I love, love, love about this book is all of the work is internal, and she starts that way, and she kind of challenges you, calls you in immediately to say, you this is not a book where you just like read about the change, you need to do the change.
Yeah,
And so walk you through a number of processes that I have already done around like journaling, meditation, sitting, being in nature, but it pulled it together in a really comprehensive way and also challenged me to say this needs to be a part of what I'm doing on a continuous basis. And that is what really builds long-term resilience, but more importantly, I think this idea of like personal integrity and being in those practices as a way of being, not as something that you post. That's not something that she points out there, but not as something that you post, not something that you do for continued productivity, because that's another thing that can also often come up in well-being books, but to truly, truly ground yourself and take care of yourself. And I will say that I feel at the end of the year after reading this book, my natural frustrations, like, where I might have an initial quote unquote crash out, have it like the distance between that has reduced significantly because I put those practices in place.
amazing. And that one sounds so interesting. And you know, I love anything that's like internal work.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
and like doing it. Amazing. My next one is actually Ina Garten's memoir, Be Ready When Luck Happens.
Mm.
And it very much is the storytelling piece of things. And I mean, I love to cook and bake. We don't necessarily talk about that because that's not what we do here. But I've got this overall kind of obsession. I watched all the cooking shows when I was younger and, Food Network, all those things. So I wanted to read this one just to learn about her. And what I loved about it is you get the stories and she paints the picture of what she's doing and starting or buying Barefoot Contessa and all the things that she does. But she is like works so hard. And I love the title, Be Ready When Luck Happens, because she also
Yes.
acknowledges how much of like her success was being in the right place at the right time and the right opportunity, which is so much luck. And I wish more people would acknowledge as they're talking through their success, like how much, yes, she worked hard and she was in the right places at the right time. And she was in positions to have those opportunities because of various different factors, right? Like her husband and what his situation was, how supportive he was, like all those pieces in place. It also, she spends time in Europe and I love France and, had lived there. And so it just connected with me on like this very deep level. Um,
Yes.
and she's been successful for a long time. So that comes through
Yeah.
as she's talking in the book. But I think as we think about like, especially, and we're going to get to this book in a minute, but when we think about like envy and seeing what other people
Mhm.
are doing, recognizing there's a combination of hard work and luck
Luck.
involved with
Yeah.
much of it. So I just really loved reading that one.
Yeah, I love this. And I have a book coming up soon that kind of plants the seeds as well, that in many ways we also can create some of our own luck. So I'm
Yes, yes, I love
excited
that.
to share that. And then I think, I mean, you should let the people know, like you said, I love France. I mean, you speak French.
I do
So
speak
I
French.
think
I
we
do
just
speak
need to
French.
say that. Just a subtle flex, you know?
Subtle flex.
I just had to put it out there.
Subtle flex. Yes.
Perfect. So, my next book, and I just love the title of this book in addition to the content, is called Positive Obsession: The Life and Times of Octavia E. Butler, and it's by Susanna M. Morris. And I
Oh,
love, yeah, it is fantastic. Positive obsession is actually a term from Octavia Butler herself, and just talked about like this notion of being obsessed and relentless in pursuing the work that's important to you. In a calling, like something that you are called to do, and going forward despite doubt, rejection, hardship, any of those elements. And I love the book because we hear so much about Octavia's work, especially how futuristic it was.
yeah.
But this book outlines like how she lived her life, her ways of being in the world. And she was actually really a really big manifester, right? And one of the things that she would say often is, so be it, see to it. So she would write out what her intentions were, what her dreams were. And then this commitment to making it happen. And it talks about her travel. You talk about someone who created their own like luck and circumstances. It is just outlined so beautifully in this book that I don't think has come through anywhere else. And so, not only if you are interested in Octavia Butler, but also if you are interested in creativity, in drive, in creative leadership, this is going to be a fantastic book to read.
Oh, and I have read some of Octavia Butler, so this sounds so interesting just to read about her and her work.
Yes, her
Yes,
life. Yeah.
amazing. Okay, my next one, and I'm cheating just a little bit on this because I actually probably read it towards the end of last year, but we haven't talked about it. So I'm
Okay.
bringing it in here because
Bring it in.
it was such, I don't know, like a transformational and eye-opening book for me, and it's The Warmth of Other Suns.
Mm,
So written by, and do you know what? I don't even know if I did mention the authors on the other ones, I think. So this is written by Isabel Wilkerson, and if I'm not mistaken, I think she also wrote Cast.
cast. That is
Yes,
correct.
which I have not read Cast yet. It's on
Hmm.
my list also. But The Warmth of Other Suns is about the Great Migration of like the
Yes.
African American population in the 70s, 60s. Yeah, I mean, it started, of course, I read it a year ago, so I want to correct me if you know the dates, but I want to say it like started kind of the 50, 40s to
Mhm,
like
mhm.
the 70s, 80s. Like it really spanned kind of
It's
a
a
long time.
significant, yeah.
Yeah, and just something like how, I mean, the rage that I felt reading it as far as like why did I not learn this? Why
Mm.
was this? I mean, it's not like the book's been around for forever, but at the same time, the Great Migration
The
happened, right?
story,
Like the
yeah.
story has. Like, why did I not learn this in school? Why was this not part of my education? So there
Mm.
was a little bit of rage that I experienced reading through it, and then there was a lot of rage when it comes to the
Yeah.
stories, right, in
Yeah.
the book. So it's a tough read in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, and I honestly would recommend it to
Yeah.
anyone,
Yeah.
everyone. Like, and I'm just gonna say, especially white folks, like in the
Yeah.
US, right? Like I
Read
feel
it.
like read it
Know
for
the
sure.
history.
Know
Yeah,
the history,
absolutely.
and it really like helps. I don't know, it added to that my understanding of just systemic
Hmm.
racism and oppression and what things look like and how recent so much of this is. Like it
Hmm.
just, anyway, I feel like everyone needs to read that book.
Yes, she's a brilliant writer, and I loved Cass, so definitely add it to your list for 2026.
Yep.
And it is such a powerful read. My family personally was also involved in the Great Migration from Georgia to Ohio, Cleveland, where I'm from, and so yeah, it's fantastic. Beautiful. All right. So up next for me, I have Authentic by the Jodi Ann Bury. And there are so much to love and so many thoughts I have about this book, but I want to share the ones that I have here with me, which I have three. I also have to go back and share one that I already said that I have here with me. And some of them are on audio versions as well. But authentic is just so powerful. What I'll say that I felt when reading this book is seen. And that's not, I am quoted in this book. I share a personal story about myself and work in the book. I'll let you all read it. But what I'll say is, it wasn't just my story that made me feel seen. It was so many stories here from women of color, Black women, women who are disabled, just across difference, and how their stories impacted their work and their approach to work. And I love Jodi Ann's both capturing that and her story, but also how we wrestle with and get clear on this idea of authenticity and what it means. Initially, I think going into the book, I thought that the book would be about, hey, let's reject this notion of authenticity. But what Jodi Ann does so brilliantly is says, like, here's the ways that workplaces are using this and it's disingenuous. And here's what to be authentic means. And so I just found it so powerful. And one line she says there, she says, authenticity invites us to declare, I am not a worker. I am a person at work. And I was just like, the book is so great. But the richness of the stories, and the realness, which we know Jodi Ann as well, it just comes through. So I loved it. One of my favorite reads. Beautiful. What's up next for you?
I take uncompete?
You can take
I'm gonna take uncompete.
uncompete.
So next, I've got it sitting here with me because we've been doing it for book club. But Uncompete by Ruchika Malhotra, who we know, who's a client of ours. And this is not why I'm saying I want you to read it. It is
Yes.
such a great book. Um, and the thing that I love about it is that it really challenges us to think differently about the benefits of competition, which I think
Yeah.
so many of us, right, have been sold that competition. And I think, like, even as a kid, being in the quote unquote gifted and talented program, and like that sets you right, like from a very young age, we're set up to compete, where
Yeah.
expectations are put on us. What does that look like? And it was such a good read and a challenging read, right? Like
It
as I
is.
was reading things, I was like, but how do we do this? And is this real, right? Like, is this realistic? Can we really do this? What does this look like? And it's also a book that really challenges you to do things, to take
Yes.
action, to
Yes.
show up differently. And it's been interesting how it's really shifted how I even approach like playing pickleball, which, right, I mean, it's a
Mm-hmm.
competition, right? You're playing
Mm-hmm.
games and someone
Mm-hmm.
wins and someone loses.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, like how I approach it from the perspective of I want to win when it comes to pickleball because not because someone else is at a deficit. Like I want to help them be their best also. And if I win, great. And even in that competition sense, right, of like what that looks like. But the other thing that's been so useful for me is thinking about envy. And she's got kind of a whole section on envy and the
Yes.
difference between, and I'm gonna say malicious and benign envy. I don't know that
Mm-hmm.
those are those the terms she
Yeah.
uses? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the value, and this goes to like one of my other favorite books, which is Emotional Agility, but like the value of really examining your envy and understanding, if it's hopefully it's benign, that's our goal, is that it's like you see someone being successful and there's a little bit of envy and great. What is that telling you about you?
Mm-hmm.
And are you taking the time to reflect? And it's been so interesting for myself as I've experienced those feelings, and then really sitting there and going, okay, am I willing to do the work that I know this person has done to do this
Yeah.
thing? Is it that important to me? And if it is, great. Okay, then
Great.
let's take action. Let's put a
Yeah.
plan in place. And if not, then I can like let that envy kind of just pass through me and just go, oh,
Yes.
yeah, I'm a little bit envious. And I'm super happy they're successful. And I know that they've worked hard and been maybe they've also had some level of privilege or luck, and being able to like recognize that and take the like sting
Mm-hmm.
and the negativity out of it for myself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been just incredibly transformational for me. It also is really interesting just thinking about how we do this with other people in the workplace, like what that looks like. And of course, there's some big shout outs to Lakita in the book and some
Oh.
quotes and some stories, and they're great. So highly recommend reading this book. It's been super fun doing it in book club too. And I think it's challenged everyone who's reading it in some of the
Yes.
same ways because we are brought up in a system. Capitalism is a competitive system, right?
Yes.
And we can do it differently.
Yes, we can make a different choice.
Yes.
I love that. It reminded me, especially the first half of the book, reminded me of one of my top reads from last year, which was Rest is
Yeah.
Resistance, and by Trisha Hersey. And one of the things is like, how you have a book and you're reading, you're like, this is so hard. Like, and I know it's right, and the data is there, and it's so hard. And it was that piece around like, can we actually imagine a world where there is no competition, and what would that look like?
Yep.
I love it. I love this book. And I also love that she gives some really amazing steps toward how we think abundantly, which is, you and I talk all the time. We talk as a team about you can learn to do pretty much anything, right? And we tell people, they're like, I'm just not a leader. I'm like, hey, we can learn these steps, right? You might have an
Yep.
aptitude or something, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. And so, this practice of how do we become more abundant in how we are being in the world comes through in the book so brilliantly, and I love it.
I'm gonna name one more thing. It's
Okay.
also really helped me think about that abundance piece, who is in my life and is in my circles, and am I surrounding myself and building community with folks who have that same approach? Not to say that of course, like I'm going to be friends and have other people in my community. And to the extent that we can find people who are aligned with that, right? Like we can build that community and village that we need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. And it has such an impact on the way we think. And so it's interesting because I think the talking about abundance and like how we think, it brings me to my last nonfiction book, which I just picked up, I think a week ago and finished. It is called The Source by Dr. Tara Swart, The Secrets of the Universe, The Science of the Brain. Obsessed. I love this book. She started her career as a doctor. Well, she's still a doctor, right? But she left being a medical doctor. She was a psychiatrist and became a coach. And so in the book, she outlines neuroscience, but combines it with the ideas around manifestation and intention. A thing that I love is that she makes sure that she is clear and shares that these are ancient ideas. They're not new. They didn't just come from nowhere. And that ancient people and indigenous people understood so many of these ideas, and that neuroscience is the thing that is actually just now catching up. And so I love it because abundance and manifestation are big, big practices, and I would say how we both do our work, and how we partner with clients. And she outlines step by step how to really think about that process while bringing the science alongside it, which is for some people really, really helpful and important. One of the things that we say to clients, or, in conversation with clients all the time, is you can believe it from a science perspective, you can believe it from a spiritual perspective. Either way, the outcome is good and it's true, right? And in it, she walks through things like visualization, intention setting, how to rewire the brain. And it is just such a powerful read. And I loved every second of reading that book.
Amazing. And Uncompete was my last nonfiction. And so we'll go on to the fiction books, but on the sort, like, I'm super excited to read The Source. I know
Yeah.
you'd mentioned it to me earlier too. And I love things that really challenge us to
Mhm.
approach things differently, especially as like such a capitalistic like society in the US and things, right, Western approach to things and very like logic, which I'm doing air quotes when I say logic because there's a whole range of things, but that whether it's spiritual or scientific, like the outcome's the same,
The
right? And
outcome's the
like it's
same. Yeah.
so valuable
Yeah.
to think through that.
Yeah.
Um, okay. My fiction book is The Space Between Worlds,
Mm.
by Micaiah Johnson. And it's science fiction, 2020, like not apocalyptic because it's kind of a whole other universe, but it's really about like different timelines and different worlds,
Oh, I
and there's
love
a
a
whole
read.
story around that, and I love a different timeline story.
Yeah. It's
I
me.
saw Sliding Doors. I don't know if you know that movie from
Yes.
with Gwyneth Paltrow from, forever ago.
Yeah.
I'm aging myself, but that I feel like when I saw that movie, it opened my eyes to like the concept of different timelines and
Mm.
realities,
Mm.
and this is very much a story about that. And there's like, like it's character driven. It explores identity and privilege and colonialism and how our circumstances like shape who we are. And it was a great book. My husband, Adam, and I listen to books a lot when we're driving on road trips. And this was one that we listened to together.
Oh, I love that.
And it was made us think, like we paused at different points and talked about different things. Like I love a good fiction book that also
Yes.
causes you to think. And while we're at it, when it comes to fiction, I love the fact, and there's data behind this, and I will try and find the research to put in show notes, that reading fiction helps you develop empathy. And so,
Yes.
like because sometimes there's people who I'll talk to who are like, I'm only reading fiction, blah, blah, I just want to read facts and whatever. And I'm like, there's so much empathy you can develop.
Mm.
And fiction that's so outside of, like, I love science fiction and fantasy and post-apocalyptic stuff because it's so kind of outside of our day to day, but it
Yeah.
really causes you to reflect and think about the world in general and people's circumstances. So anyway, big fan of this
I
book, highly
love
recommend it.
it. Yeah, I'm adding that to my list. Definitely slide my way in Slack. I love it. I love it. I will, so I'll close this all out with my fiction book, which is called Here One Moment, and it's by Leanne Moriarty. Moriarty.
Oh, I love Leanne Moriarty.
So good. This was my first read
Okay.
of hers. And just picture this. It is a woman who stands up on a flight and then she starts to point to people and predict exactly when they'll die. This is how like this is
Oh
early
man.
in the book. And then the predictions start to come true. And it is fantastic. It weaves together this idea of like what is fate, right? What is science? What is just feeling anxious, right? And pulls all of this together. And so as you're reading the book, you're trying to figure out, is this woman someone who can tell the future, or are these things coincidence? And how much do we make coincidence happen, right? We've been actually that's a thing that's been going throughout, right? Which is like
Yep.
luck, abundance, and it weaves this story together so beautifully. I mean, I was at the edge of my seat reading this book, and made it through it in like record time, and it is fantastic. So I love it so much, and I would recommend that anyone read
Oh,
this book.
I'm gonna have to read this one for sure. I think I'm looking at her list of books right now, and I think I've read like three other of her books. So I'm gonna add this one to my
So I
list
might
because
have to
that
check out
sounds,
another one.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so fun. It's amazing. My family was definitely tired of me talking about
I mean, Lakita, that's why I started the Leadership Book Club, is because I was
it.
like, I need people to talk to about these
Yeah.
books.
Absolutely. Look, we might have to add a fiction division. But this was fantastic. Well, it's many, many fiction book clubs out there. We can just join
There
them.
are. Although I will say one of my favorite experiences in grad school was we read Lord of the Flies from the perspective of leadership and what
Wow.
happens when people get power, have power, what it looks like. And so there's always that different approach to a fiction book club where we like approach it that way.
Yes.
Anyway, just had to
I
say that.
love
Yes,
it. I
there are
know
lots
we're
of book clubs out there,
planting
but
some seeds right
yeah,
here. I
yeah.
love it. So those were our top reads for 2025. And we are going to link all of them in the show notes. And I think that a theme that I'm pulling from so much of what we read, Chloe, is about this idea of like luck, manifestation, also doing the hard work.
Yep.
That came like being very clear eyed about the state of the world and what we might do next, and how we can contribute. But it was fantastic. Thanks for discussing those.
So fun. And this is our last combined podcast of the
Mhm.
year because we'll have our own individual episodes. So just a quick shout out to all of our listeners as we do this together. Like, thanks for being with us this year.
Yes.
And as always, I'm going to say it this time. And as
Yes, say it.
always, thank you for your leadership.
Cheers, y'all.
We hope today's conversation gave you something to think about and, more importantly, something you can use. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with another leader, entrepreneur, or friend who might benefit from hearing it. And for additional resources, frameworks, and tools related to our topic, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at CoCreateWork.com. And of course, if you have any question you'd like us to explore in a future episode, we would love to do that. So please send it to podcast@CoCreateWork.com. As always, thank you for being here and thank you for your leadership.